Hello everybody, I am back with my next project, which is actually an Arrma Kraton. Now this is the 1/10 scale version that can run on up to 4S. So anyways, I'm going to try not to brabble a lot, and we're just going to get it out of the box, see how it's in there, see how it comes out, and see what it looks like. All right, so for starters, they give you 4 AA batteries for the transmitter, which is a 2.4 gigahertz. Personally, I prefer Traxxas transmitters. I think they just feel better in the hand. Plus, I'm not a fan of the trigger throw. See, that's all you get for braking. So it's kind of a little more sensitive, but I mean, they work. And again, they are 2.4 gigahertz, only take 4 AA batteries. And you know, they do the job. They have throttle limiting, so you can limit for beginners. You can do 50% max throttle, 75% or 100%. And it also has steering trim, throttle, and steering rate, throttle trim, and steering trim. You get this little card. Nobody really cares about that. It's like, I think it's just part support. You get a bag of tools. Looks like 2 Allen wrenches, probably 2mm, 2.5 millimeters, and you get that funky Arrma tool. That's like just a multi-purpose tool. That's obviously for the wheel hexes, because this does use 17mm hubs, and you get some shock spacers too. Technical pack, which is basically just exploded views, all the part numbers used to assemble the vehicle. Never seen this before. Looks like just Spectrum Electronics info. And then the Arrma Get Started. This is the quick start guide. But anyways, here's the truck. So the Arrma Kraton is marketed as a 1/10 scale monster truck, which I find pretty odd. You can see it is rather large for a 1/10 scale. So for example, the wheelbase on this is 14 inches, whereas the Traxxas Rustler, for example, has a wheelbase of, it's 2.5 inches longer than the wheelbase of the Rustler 4x4. Its overall length, you know, from bumper to bumper is 22 inches, which is actually 3 inches longer than the Rustler 4x4, and is actually 18 inches wide, which is a whopping 5 inches wider than the Rustler 4x4. The closest thing this compares to in size with Traxxas is the Traxxas Sledge, which is actually marketed as 1/8 scale. This wheelbase is, the Kraton's wheelbase is about 1 inch shorter than the Sledge. Its length is about 2 inches shorter, but it has the same width. So it's kind of odd that they market this as a 1/10 scale. But anyways, we'll take the body off and see what's under the hood. And interestingly enough, this actually uses clipped body. It has body clips. I haven't seen those in actually a long time, and honestly I actually prefer clips over clipless. That is just my opinion. I wish Traxxas would go back to clipped bodies, because honestly it just makes upgrading to aftermarket bodies just easier, you know. But anyways, that is the body. And every time I take a look at an Arrma, I say the same thing. I do think I think they look better than Traxxas. They do a much better job at styling their vehicles aesthetically. And this is what we got under the hood. For starters, you see that nice aluminum chassis brace. That is threaded, it seems like. Interesting. And the suspension, and you can see, so this is 4S. So you have, so basically you can either run the reason for this is a jumper. Basically, the logic with this is that you can either run one 4S battery or two 2Ss. And so they give you 2 plugins so you can hook up two S batteries. I guess I'll get to the point. This is the Spectrum. This is a Spectrum 120 amp 4S capable ESC. And it sends its power to a Spectrum. I think it's called the, what is it called? It's called the Spectrum. Can't remember the name of the motor. Anyways, but it's 2400 kV, which is actually the exact same kV rating as the 4S Traxxas Millennium system motors. So motor speed is going to be the exact same at any given voltage. You can count on that. And I actually plan on hoping, speaking of Traxxas Millennium systems, I actually plan on running a Traxxas Millennium 4S system in here because it's just what I came from. I have Traxxas batteries. So I'm hoping later in the video, we're going to see if I can get this, if I can somehow jerry-rig this massive Traxxas ESC into this vehicle, because I do want to run Traxxas batteries. Either I'll have to do that or I'll have to just chop off these connectors and run a Traxxas connector, which I don't want to do. But anyways, we can go on to the servo. That servo is the Spectrum S662. It is actually all metal gear, and it is smaller than the one that I had in the Maxx. Even though this vehicle is the same, almost the same size as the Maxx. So that's interesting. It has a much smaller servo, but it could be powerful. You know, sizes and everything. There's some pretty powerful servos that are pretty small in size. And steering looks like it uses. Looks like it uses cold planer style steering. Take a look underneath. Yeah, you kind of have the sliding rack. I'm actually glad the servo saver. For a while, Arrma was using the old school servo saver, where the saver was on the horn of the servo, and I hated that design. I had a lot of issues with it in my Big Rock. But again, unfortunately, I was never able to put a video of that up. I wasn't a fan of it. It looks like, I am going to take this apart, take a deeper look, but it looks like they did use the much updated, the better style of steering. And this motor sends its power to a metal gear diff, so we will take that out and take a look at that. That's kind of my thing. I like taking my vehicles apart on the first look. I think it gives a much better, it's a first look. So people will watch these videos because they want to see what they're buying. So for starters, you kind of saw me playing with the tires. The tires are super soft. I really do like this tire compound. You can see it really deforms under my fingers. It's not tacky, but it is very soft. You can see there's a little bit of sidewall deformation. Hopefully it's a lot better than the Maxx. So hopefully the steering will feel a little more responsive on road than the Maxx, because I made a note in my Maxx video, because the sidewalls are just much taller. So like the sidewall would actually, going around a quick turn, it would actually fold up under like that, and it just causes inconsistent handling. Suspension setup feels really nice. It's super smooth. It sounds like there is air. Yeah, there's definitely air in the front. You can both hear it and feel it. So I might address that, but we'll see how it performs. You see it does have shock absorbing bumper in the front. Wow, it's very, very stiff, but it is there. The shock absorption. And the rear does not have, looks like it does have a wheelie bar, and the tires are actually rubber. That's interesting. So it does have rubber tires for the rear wheelie bar. And it has the classic, like a lot of monster trucks, the front and rear shocks are actually different lengths. You can see the fronts are much shorter than the rear. And it does have, let's take a look. We'll just take the camera off. You can see it does have adjustable turnbuckles up front and adjustable camber lengths. So you can adjust camber and toe up front. And the rear has adjustable camber lengths. But it looks like toe cannot be adjusted. Looks like, yeah, toe is fixed just into the arms themselves. And it does use Yeah, and you can see it does have plastic drive shafts on the front and rear. And one thing I like about Arrma vehicles is they have these lower shock guards, and that really helps protect the shafts from getting like nicks and stuff and scratches from dirt and rocks. Has that on the front, and you can see on the rear there's like the entire arm. You see right there, the entire arm kind of has its own little guard, so that's kind of nice. And you can see there is some play in the front. I'll have to see if that can be fixed by just tightening stuff, or if that's just how it comes from the box. And it does have a wing. Right here in the back, it does come with the wing. It is not adjustable. I doubt it actually. I don't think it's adjustable. Is it adjustable? No, it is not. And I doubt it actually does anything for performance. I bet it's just there for looks and styling. And it does use all hex hardware. I just have a plastic center shaft, by the way, with the center support bearing. The ESC and motor both do come with fans pre-installed, so that's nice. And let's see what else. It does use all hex hardware. There's the bottom of the chassis. There's a peek at that center metal diff. Chassis is plastic, by the way, fiber reinforced. And it does have these tall guards that's supposed to help keep rocks out. In my experience with the big rock, they do not work. They actually just, trap dirt. It makes it harder for dirt and rocks to get out. This is your battery tray, and it does use Velcro straps with these little plastic hooks that hook around batteries. So I want to see how well my Traxxas batteries will fit in there. So here's one of my Traxxas 4S batteries. I know a lot of people have Traxxas batteries, so I'm just going to do this just to see how well a Traxxas battery will fit in here. So I have the long ones. Looks like I'll have to move that, which I don't believe that position is adjustable from the factory, no. So it looks like I'll have to take that out and drill my own hole and adjust that. It looks like you can remove that, so we'll investigate that further. I'm sure I can get Traxxas batteries to work. And these tires, they're Arrma's, they're called Copperhead. That's the name of the tread. Again, really soft. Like most RTR, I doubt they're going to be that good. Usually they're not. It comes down to a combination of compound softness, tread design, and just how the tire reacts to different terrains as far as how it deforms and conforms to terrains. A lot of engineering actually goes into tires, a lot more than people think. And what's interesting about the suspension here, I'll bring my camera back and bring it down so I can show it better. So I'm curious to see how they engineered the geometry of their suspension. So I'm going to roll the vehicle, simulating a body roll, and we are going to watch the front camber. Steering surface is really soft, by the way. Yeah, you see there's a lot of camber change in the front. Which can actually be a good thing. So you always want the outside wheel to have a little bit of negative camber, which unfortunately this one does not. It's actually doing the opposite of what it should be. So it's probably going to have very poor handling on road. But on-road driving is not the purpose of this vehicle. You want as little camber change as possible when going around turns. Yeah, that's a lot of camber change in both the front and rear. But not really surprising. This vehicle wasn't engineered for on-road driving. So next, we'll probably do my favorite part, which I love taking things apart and seeing how they work. So I'm actually going to take this vehicle apart. We're going to take a look at that diff, and I am curious. I haven't done much research. I know on the big rock I had, the diffs were the front and rear differentials were actually plastic. I am curious to see if they are the same on this vehicle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the front apart, study that steering, give you a better look at that. Excuse me, give you a better look at that steering. I'm going to take just the front diff out. You know, it'd probably be easier. I'm taking the front apart anyways. And we're going to take the center diff out and take a look at that and see what all we get. And I might take out the ESC, see if I can shimmy this Traxxas one in. If not, I might just buy, I might just get Spectrum batteries, because I plan on running a lot more Arrmas anyways. They do make a lot of stuff I'm interested in, so it might just be worth investing in their batteries. But anyways, we'll take it apart and see what all we got. One thing to note, the hubs are aluminum and the nuts are aluminum as well, so you definitely want to use thread lock, because they will kind of back themselves off with use if you do not put thread lock, whereas plastic nuts kind of are like in themselves, kind of by nature, their own natural thread lock, but these are all metal, so you definitely do want to use thread lock. So just to, just want to make a quick note on that. And it looks like the tires are the wheels are the exact same design, front and rear. Some vehicles, the fronts and rear are different, so you do have to pay attention to that when putting them together. But on this one, they are the same, so that's nice. It makes maintenance slightly easier. So yeah, just want to make a note on that. Okay, so first milestone, I did get the diff out, and you can see it is a metal diff. So it looks like on their 4S vehicles, they actually upgraded from plastic diffs to metal, and it is lubricated, by the way. It looks like with lithium-based grease, because it is white. So that's good to know. And there's a couple of things I want to note about the construction of the vehicle as a whole. For one, you can see the diff lives in its own little plastic kind of like carrier, which I actually think is kind of interesting. And you can see the slider shafts do use the old school four lugs instead of the Traxxas that they have updated the design. They use, it's like multiple spline. Apparently it helps prevent dirt from getting caught a little bit better. But yeah, so I just want to note that on the front diff. And as far as the steering, you can see there's a better look at the steering rack. It slides back and forth, and it does look like, unfortunately, the servo, I can see it, I can already see it. The servo horn is the servo saver, and that is just a terrible, outdated design. I wish Arrma would fix that, because honestly, it sucks, if we're being honest. If anybody's being honest, they will admit that. I don't know why Arrma sticks to servo saver horn style, because it's been outdated for a long time, and I wish they would fix that on something as expensive as this. I forgot to mention, these retail for $570. That's what these go for, and I feel like it just could be better for that much money, the steering system. Anyways, next I'm going to get the center diff out, and we will take a look at that. Now here is the transmission assembly. You can see it is a metal gear diff, and it is a metal pinion. And it looks like it is not lubricated. It looks like it does run dry. or if it is lubricated, it is very lightweight oil or grease. This is the center diff. Does ride on a ball bearing. It is silicone oil filled, so it is tunable, and it is super, super, super stiff. I wish I measured the stiffness before I took it apart, but the front diff was actually fairly open. I'm assuming the rear diff is fairly open as well. It's actually a lot lighter than the one in the Maxx, which I just recently tested. But anyways, this is the center diff. So now I'm going to get the vehicle put back together and I guess go over my final thoughts. All right, I am back. And as you can see, obviously I got the vehicle put back together, and I actually was able to successfully install a Traxxas radio system. Got my ESC mounted, and I got my Traxxas Valenion motor mounted. And I will now give you kind of a closer look at that. ESC, I kind of had to put in there kind of crooked. I was only able to use one screw, by the way. I could not secure it on the other side because Spectrum ESCs and Traxxas ESCs have slightly different widths between their screws. But I was still able to get it fairly secure. Thankfully, it's kind of butted up against the chassis, and that kind of actually held it in place. So anyways, that's good there. And the motor mounted pretty much fuss free because these it's the exact same size as this Arrma motor. Here it is, by the way, up close. I'm pretty sure Traxxas Valenion motors and these Spectrum motors, they're probably made in this. I bet they're made by the same OEM, and they probably are the same motor, honestly. Traxxas motors, instead of having 6 mounting holes, they only have 4 mounting holes. But it was actually mounted, the angle of these wires coming out was actually the exact same. So I mean, I'm pretty sure they are the exact same motor. And you can see the size difference in the fans, by the way. This Traxxas system has a much bigger fan. That's actually why I wanted to run it. And the reason I had to change out the motor is because Spectrum ESCs and Arrma ESC, or Spectrum ESCs and Traxxas ESCs and motors actually have different size connectors. Traxxas uses, I think it's 6.5 millimeter, and these are probably, I think it's either 5.5 or 5 or something like that. But you cannot hook up Valenion motors to Spectrum ESCs and vice versa. And speaking of the ESC, here it is in all of its glory, ripped out. You can see it. It's much smaller in size compared to the Valenion system. And the one thing I'm not a fan of is that they actually have external power buttons, whereas the Traxxas ESCs or Valenion, it's the buttons built into it. And again, to run 4S on this one, they give the option to run 2 2S battery packs instead of just one single 4S. So that's why they have the extra lead with the little jumper for when it's not being used. And speaking of the receiver or the radio system, I was able to put in a Traxxas radio system. And so here's a better look at the tiny little Spectrum receiver, in case you wondered what that looked like. Traxxas ones are probably, they're like perfect squares, probably about that size actually. I bet it'll probably fit pretty perfectly inside that little square. Whereas that one's like that. So you can see these are much smaller. Spectrum stuff in general just seems much smaller than Traxxas, other than their motors, because I'm guaranteed it's probably the same motor. But anyways, oh yeah, and I realized I forgot to mention, for shock mounting in the front, you have no options as far as tuning shock position on the top or bottom. And on the rear, they give you one option. You can put the shock further in, which will slightly decrease the stiffness of the suspension, because the arm will basically have more leverage on the shock. So tuning options are rather limited as far as shock absorbers. Of course, you can always change stiffness of the springs and add preload spacers. And of course, you can adjust camber in the rear and camber and toe in the front. And see, there's that servo saver. You see, I'm doing that. It's not even turning the servo. I have very little hopes, honestly, for that servo saver. I remember with that big rock I had, I was not a fan of it. It was way too soft, and it wasn't durable. It was not reliable at all. I wanted to get the body back on for the final shot, but yeah, anyways, that's my first look at the Arrma Kraton. Look forward to running this, and I will do a follow-up video again like I did with the Maxx. After I get it broke in, I do want to do kind of like a wear, take it apart, see how it's wearing, check how all that stuff's going. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.